Hello, I'm Anthony. I'm going to take you through some of the pitfalls you might encounter when you're trying to determine the rhyming pattern or the rhythmic pattern of a piece of music that you're writing. I've got a couple of really simple drum lines here. This piece of music started with this doll line, which is the bass drum. As you can see on screen, it's very simple. Let's listen to it first before I go any further. Incredibly simple. And really easy and tempting to think that this is in straight time. I've got a 30-second quantized grid set up on screen here, and as you can see, almost all of these notes fit into the pattern. So if you're trying to figure out what the timing of this piece is, you might be tempted to think, oh, brilliant, 32 fits nicely, that will do. The problem is that there is an issue. If I zoom in, have a look really carefully at the second of the C sharp, so I'm going to take it off cycle and let this thing start to run. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit further. Have a look at every second C sharp 3 when there are pairs of notes like this. Each one of them is slightly early, according to this quantized grid. Every one. The second of the C sharp 3s is always early. Now, I played this in live on the keyboard. It was basically against a 4/4 click track, a standard 86 BPM click track. I played this thing in and I felt like I played it quite naturally. It felt good when I played it in. So I'd be really surprised if every instance of that particular note was somehow wrong against some sort of formalized timing structure. My spidey sense is telling me that this isn't in straight time, and part of the intuition that you have to develop when you're figuring out what rhythm patterns are in your piece is, well, one of the things is that they quite regularly change. You'll see in this very simple rhythm that we're going to talk about today, there are a couple of different patterns that appear. But if your inner rhythm consultant is saying dum-de-dum-de-dum to you, then you're probably not in straight time. You're probably in swing or triplet time. In this particular case, swing. Now, at the moment, that's just intuition, but we can use Cubase to help us try to answer some of these questions a little bit more empirically. If I open the quantized grid, and instead of running in 30 seconds, I'm going to come right down in the timing structure. We really don't want to be having to deal with something at this level of fine granularity, because any slightly inaccurately played notes could very well end up going to the wrong quantized beat. I want to use something a lot more widely defined. I'm going to start off with eighths. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There are 8 beats here, but I'm swinging the first of the two notes. Beats 1, 3, 5, and 7 are longer. They're stretched out, and that's what swing does. If I now start increasing the swing factor on this quantized grid, I'm going to keep on doing it until this grey line just starts meeting all of these C sharp 3s that I can see. Now, in preparation for this video, I went through a little bit more than you can see on screen. Oh, that's good. I actually came across this same number. 66% seems to be the best fit, such that each one of those C sharp 3s is now on this grid line. Now, something really important to remember about swing, it's not a science. The whole point of swing is that this is human beings expressing a kind of an emotional sense through the rhythm, through their groove. So it's not supposed to be formalized or defined. It's very difficult to write this stuff down in classical score. So the actual percentage by which you're swinging is going to change day to day. This happened to be this moment in time when I recorded this rhythm. This is how much I was swinging, and I've basically gone backwards and reverse engineered this. It turns out that I was very consistent throughout the couple of minutes that I recorded this rhythm. So now that we've got this 66% swing kind of theory established, let's let the rhythm run and see how many of these lines, these grey lines, match my pattern. Okay, so it looks really good. All of those spurious C sharp 3s, they're now within a few ticks of the quantized grid line. So it looks like I was right. It is, in fact, a swing piece. Now I'm going to jump forward to bar 38. And something interesting happens. We've got a couple of rogue notes. This isn't anywhere near the quantized grid, nor is this. Let's hear what that pattern sounds like. Okay, I'm clearly doing something else. Well, I could just kind of ignore this awkward note and think, well, I've temporarily gone down to 16s and everything is still swinging. It's just that my grid doesn't work and I'm not going to worry about it and I'll just close my eyes and move on. Yeah, you can write music that way, but I like to know what's going on. I would like to know, what was I actually thinking? What was my body doing when I played these notes? What I've done is I've temporarily moved out of swing and I've shifted into triplet time. For the second half of this bar, what I'm actually doing is 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. I've switched to a quite military precise triplet time. Doesn't have that sense of groove that swing does. We are now once again in the formal world of theory. So if I switch to this being 1/8 triplet instead, suddenly all of those notes line up perfectly. The first half of the bar is swinging, the second half of the bar is in triplet time. That's absolutely fine, totally reasonable, and it sounds like a turnaround. That's what you very often get in a turnaround, a switch of rhythm, a switch of pattern, to kind of emphasize the fact that something exciting is going to happen. You're going to switch on to a new part of the song. I did that completely instinctively and then retrospectively figured out what I'd actually done. You can get yourself in all sorts of trouble trying to figure out how to quantize these notes if you want to. None of the straight times work. All the way down to 30 seconds, you can see that they're way out. If we try to swing 30 seconds, we're going to get ourselves into a terrible pickle. You can get it such that the quantized line will meet some of the notes, but move further and further away from other notes. And you end up just basically wrapping yourselves in knots. It's not straight time. Don't try to make it be. If you intuitively reach for the triplet buttons, start out with the big numbers. You could once again quite easily fall into the trap of thinking, oh, this is 16th triplets. Well, try counting 16th triplets over a beat at 86 BPM. You'll have a job. It's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. It's really pretty fast. And that's not what I'm playing. I'm playing much more slowly than that. I'm actually playing in 8th triplets. And there we are, the lines match perfectly. Let's have a look at bar 44 in this pattern and see what's going on here. So now that you've got the idea of what the kinds of things that you're supposed to be listening for, maybe you can figure out yourself what's going on with this particular bar. The answer is that for the first 3 beats, I'm in triplet time, and for the last beat of the bar, I've switched back to swing time. So all of these notes are in triplets. If I quantize them, I'm actually playing pretty badly, quite frankly. The third note of each one of these patterns is quite badly played, and it's because I'm prepared for it. I was doing everything completely organically. So have a quick run through the straight time options just to prove that that's the case. Here we are in 16th time, and nothing is going to get us anywhere near. In 30-second time, these notes are all worse than my triplet notes would be, and swing doesn't help me. It's not going to do the job. It's not going to get there. Triplet time does. It just so happens that these third notes of each of the triplet sessions are a little bit anxious, a little bit previous. Let's have a listen to what that sounds like when it's being quantized into triplets. And I wouldn't do this. I wouldn't set it this military precise. This is just for the purpose of example. You want that kind of, drums in the jungle sort of effect. But for this fourth beat, I revert back to swing, and you can see that this note is nowhere near the 8th triplet time that we're looking at. Whereas when I switch back to swing, I actually have a preset here, 1/8 with 66 swing. Beautiful. The line is absolutely spot on. So for this final beat, I've reverted back to swing, and you can feel me go back into the main pattern again. Just as a matter of interest, if you see this catch range, it's set up pretty big. This is to allow me to quantize the entire piece. Again, not something that I would typically do. It's just an illustration of things that are available to you. If you've got your swing quantized, you can set a pretty big catch range. Anything that's remotely close to swing time will get caught and moved correctly. But those spurious notes that were way outside the swing options and I had to switch to triplet time in order to catch them, those would be ignored. That's the empty spaces that you can see in these catch ranges. Any notes that appear there would be ignored and wouldn't get quantized. Now I've brought in the second rhythm. So the groove agent was a preset pattern that I basically just did a search for swing grooves and dragged this thing into the project pretty much as is. I deleted the kicks and the snares because I don't want them. Essentially, we're dealing with hats and tambourines here. But I've cycled over bar 20. Let's have a listen to it first, and then we'll have a chat about what's going on. This note here is a great example of why catch ranges are great. You can see that we've got a swing groove. You can see that all of the other notes on screen fit the groove perfectly well. This note doesn't. So firstly, we can try to figure out what's actually happening in this bar. I think I've probably switched to triplet time for this beat. If we have a look at 1/8 triplet, see how that fits. Yeah, it's probably that. None of this is a science. You basically need to use your intuition to figure out 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. So I think this is a note that's in triplet time. But if I was quantizing this pattern using my regular swing preset, this would get thrown a very long way, either to the beginning of the beat or to the swung quantized line. Well, I don't want that to happen. If I have a catch range, this note is going to fall beautifully in this big open space and will be ignored. So if I select all of the notes in this part and quantize them to 1/8, 66% swing, watch all of the notes, this one won't move. Okay, now everything was pretty subtle, to be honest, but you can quite clearly see all of the other notes moving and the F sharp is being left alone. That's the beauty of catch ranges. I can then come along later. If there's several notes going on in this pattern, I can switch to triplet time and quantize it if I want. But catch range just makes sure that nothing egregious is going to happen. So as you can see, the moment you choose to switch out of straight time, quantizing becomes much more tricky. You can't simply select an entire part, press Q and expect everything to work. If you're working in swing or triplet time, it's very common that you're going to shift between those two pattern types and one won't work for the other. Swing is not the same as triplet time. If I've got my quantized grid set to 66%, this quantized line is not the same as it would be if I was in 1/8 triplet. Watch very carefully where that grey line is. It's just slightly behind the F sharp note. If I now switch it to 1/8 triplets, the line's moved quite a long way. If I quantize to this, that's not where I want the note to be. So swing time gives you a very different feel. It's putting this note somewhere in between those two triplet notes. That's the point, that the human being decides how much to swing. Once you've set up that pattern, once you've defined your grid for that moment of the piece, then yes, you can quantize to it if you want to, but do so carefully, because there's no guarantee that the musician is swinging for 100% of the performance. Hope you found this useful. Please hit like if you did. I'll see you next time. Thanks very much.